The night had started off like any other for Marcus and Malcolm Blackwell, twin brothers whose bond had been forged not only in blood but in fire, sweat, and sacrifice, a connection that stretched from the cracked sidewalks of their childhood neighborhood all the way to the shadowy battlefields of foreign lands where they had both earned reputations as warriors of extraordinary caliber. Yet here in Atlanta, none of that mattered, at least not in the eyes of strangers who saw only two tall, broad-shouldered black men sitting in the corner of a dimly lit bar, nursing their glasses of bourbon and talking in hushed but animated tones about life, family, and the strange way fate always seemed to test them. The neon glow from the jukebox washed over their faces, accentuating their identical features, the sharp jawlines, the deep brown eyes that always seemed to pierce through masks and lies, and though Marcus wore civilian clothes now, jeans, a plain white tee, and a jacket, his posture betrayed years of discipline, the kind only an army captain could possess, while Malcolm, dressed in a fitted black shirt that stretched over his muscular frame, exuded a quiet confidence that came from leading Navy SEALs through missions so classified the public would never know his name, let alone his deeds, and yet to the crowd in that bar, they were just two regular patrons minding their business, until the door swung open with a bang that silenced laughter and cut the music like a blade, and in marched four police officers, their expressions sharp with suspicion, their hands twitching near their holsters, scanning the room as if hunting for prey, and when their eyes locked onto the twins, it was as though some unspoken prejudice flared to life, an ugly instinct that whispered danger where there was none, and without hesitation the lead officer barked, "You two! Stand up, hands where we can see them," causing conversations to freeze and every patron to turn their heads toward the brothers, tension rippling through the air like static before a storm. Marcus felt his chest tighten, not out of fear for himself but for the possible chaos about to unfold, while Malcolm's instincts sharpened instantly, his SEAL training kicking in as he assessed exits, counted weapons, and evaluated the angles of confrontation, but neither moved too quickly, for they both understood the deadly consequences of being misread in such situations, so Marcus raised his palm slowly, his voice calm yet firm as he asked, "Officers, what seems to be the problem?" And the cop sneered, spitting out, "We got a call about two suspicious individuals matching your description, maybe carrying weapons, maybe causing trouble," though anyone with eyes could see the brothers had been nothing but quiet customers, their only crime sitting while black in the wrong part of town, and the murmurs among the other bar-goers confirmed it, whispers of, "That's not true," and, "They've been here all night," circling around, but the officers ignored the voices, stepping closer, their hands now gripping their holsters, the room heavy with dread, and in that instant, Marcus caught Malcolm's eye, a silent exchange passing between them, the kind only brothers and warriors could share, a promise that no matter what happened, they would not be humiliated, they would not be broken, and they would not let anyone disrespect the honor they had shed blood to earn. Though still they kept their composure, knowing full well that revealing their true identities too soon might escalate matters in ways no one was ready for, yet something inside Malcolm stirred, a coiled fire ready to spring, for he had faced enemies with rocket launchers and insurgents with ambush plans more sophisticated than these officers could dream of. And it enraged him to his core that after all he had done to protect his country, here in the heart of it, he was being treated like a criminal by those sworn to serve and protect. But Marcus, always the more diplomatic of the two, gave a subtle shake of his head, silently reminding Malcolm that the battlefield rules were different here, that they couldn't solve this with brute force, not yet. So he spoke again, his tone clipped yet respectful, "We're not armed, we're not causing trouble, check with anyone in here," but the officers either didn't hear or didn't care, for the leader snapped, "Don't move. Hands on the table, now," and in that moment the entire bar seemed to hold its breath, people clutching their drinks tighter, some pulling out phones, others ducking low, the air electric with fear, and as Malcolm reluctantly set his glass down, a sudden crash at the bar counter, some drunk stumbling and dropping a bottle, triggered one officer's nerves, his hand jerking his gun halfway from the holster, and that was the instant Malcolm's SEAL instincts fully ignited, his body tensing like a spring, his mind calculating the probability of bullets flying, but before he could act, Marcus's voice cut through the noise like thunder, commanding, authoritative, unmistakably military, "Stand down," a tone so powerful, so filled with command presence, that for a split second even the officers froze, confused, as if their brains were trying to reconcile the authority dripping from his voice with the uniforms they themselves wore, and in that second of hesitation, the fragile balance of power in that bar shifted, unnoticed by most, but clear to the twins, for they knew this confrontation was no longer about mistaken identity or suspicion. It was about respect, power, and the deadly consequences of ignorance, and the night was only just beginning to unravel in ways none of them could imagine. The silence that followed Marcus's thunderous command was thick and suffocating, every eye in the bar glued to the unfolding scene, The four officers now visibly unsettled, though they tried to mask it behind scowls and tightened grips on their weapons, yet the timbre of Marcus's voice lingered in the air like an echo of authority, one that no ordinary civilian could muster, and it rattled them because somewhere deep in their subconscious training, they recognized it, the cadence, the confidence, the commanding resonance of someone who had led men into battle. But before reason could cut through pride, the lead officer doubled down, his voice louder, harsher, fueled more by ego than procedure. "Don't you raise your voice at me. I said hands on the table, now." And that was when Malcolm, who had remained eerily calm until now, tilted his head ever so slightly, his deep eyes locking onto the officer with the kind of gaze that men on the other side of a rifle scope had seen in their last moments, a gaze that could unnerve the bravest souls, and he spoke low, almost a growl. "You're making a mistake you don't want to make." But his tone was controlled, precise, carrying weight like a stone thrown into still water, rippling outward and striking the nerves of everyone listening, and the other patrons whispered among themselves, their phones recording, some muttering, "This is wrong," while others, sensing the potential explosion, edged toward the exits. And just when it seemed the standoff would break into chaos, a sudden shift occurred. Another officer, younger, less hardened by prejudice, hesitated, his brow furrowing as he studied the twins. Something gnawed at him, something familiar in the way they carried themselves, and under his breath he muttered, "Sir, they don't look like suspects, they look like..." But before he could finish, his superior barked, "Quiet. Rookie." The kind of snap meant to silence not just words but doubt, and so the pressure mounted again. Yet in that volatile moment, a door in the back of the bar creaked open, and a man in a tailored suit stepped out from the shadows, his face pale under the flickering lights, his expression one of nervous recognition, for he knew exactly who the Blackwell twins were. He had seen Malcolm once in a Pentagon briefing, heard Marcus's name in circles of army brass, and he realized with dawning horror that the officers were standing on the edge of catastrophe. But his hesitation, born of fear that speaking up might expose his own shady dealings, kept him silent for now. And so the scene dragged on, thick with danger, Marcus's patience thinning as his training warred with his rising anger. Malcolm coiled like a predator ready to strike, the officers too blinded by pride to de-escalate. And then it happened. One officer, his hand trembling, pulled his weapon fully, pointing it squarely at Marcus's chest, the metallic click of the safety snapping off cutting through the air like a guillotine's blade, gasps filling the room, a woman screaming, "Don't shoot." But it was too late to undo the action. The line had been crossed, and in the blink of an eye Malcolm moved, not toward violence, not yet, but with the fluidity of a man trained to disarm threats in a heartbeat, his chair scraping back as he rose to his full towering height, his presence radiating dominance, his voice no longer calm but sharp as steel. "Lower that weapon," each word a command, not a request, his tone laced with the authority of countless operations where lives hung in the balance. And for the first time the officers felt it, felt they weren't in charge, weren't in control, felt the raw edge of a presence that outclassed them in every conceivable way. But the lead officer, too far gone into arrogance, sneered, "And what are you gonna do if I don't?" And Malcolm's lips curled into a thin, dangerous smile. "You'll find out," he said simply, a promise, not a threat, a statement backed by years of deadly efficiency. And in that moment Marcus knew they were teetering on the edge of exposure, their carefully hidden identities about to be revealed in a way neither of them had planned. And sure enough, the rookie officer, unable to contain his growing suspicion, finally blurted, "Wait, I've seen him before. That's Commander Malcolm Blackwell, SEAL Team legend, classified missions, decorated hero." And the room erupted in gasps, phones raised higher, some patrons whispering, "Commander. SEALs," while others looked on in disbelief, and the lead officer's face drained of color, his arrogance cracking as he stammered, That's impossible, you're lying." But before he could push further, Marcus, realizing the veil was lifted, rose beside his brother, his own voice ringing out with a thunder that could only come from a man who had spent years commanding soldiers. "And I am Captain Marcus Blackwell, United States Army, your superior in every way you can imagine." And the words struck like a hammer, reverberating across the bar, sinking into the hearts of the officers, shattering whatever delusion of control they had. And for the first time, fear replaced arrogance in their eyes. But the revelation was only the beginning, for unknown to everyone inside, outside the bar black SUVs were pulling up silently, engines humming, tinted windows hiding the figures within, men and women in suits stepping out with calculated precision, earpieces glinting in the neon glow, government agents who had been tracking Malcolm for weeks not because he was a criminal but because of a leak in classified operations that had painted him as a potential target. And as the doors swung open and the agents marched in, the already tense standoff turned into a powder keg. For now the brothers stood not just against arrogant cops but under the scrutiny of federal eyes, and the entire bar became the stage for a drama of justice, corruption, hidden truths, and the unmasking of power that had long remained in the shadows. And Marcus realized with a sinking heart that this was no coincidence, that the call the officers claimed to have received might have been orchestrated, bait designed to corner them, and Malcolm, eyes narrowing like a hawk, knew it too, his instincts whispering that this night was not random. It was a setup, a trap, a test, and the true enemy had yet to show its face, but when it did, they would be ready. The bar, once a sanctuary of neon warmth and laughter, had transformed into a crucible of tension, the walls closing in as local police with trembling hands and federal agents with cold eyes stood face to face with the Blackwell twins, and though the officers who had instigated this confrontation now quaked in their boots, their weapons lowered by instinctive fear rather than conscious respect, the agents brought an entirely new storm, their formation crisp, their presence clinical, their leader stepping forward with a briefcase in one hand and a glint of authority in his gaze, a man known only in government corridors as Director Halvorsen, his reputation one of manipulation, secrets, and ruthless power plays, and when he spoke, his voice was like ice. Commander Malcolm Blackwell. Captain Marcus Blackwell, you've both been difficult to track, but it seems fortune has brought us to the same table tonight, and his words sent a ripple through the room, the bar-goers whispering, realizing this was no ordinary misunderstanding but something far larger, more sinister, and Malcolm's jaw tightened, his instincts screaming that Halvorsen wasn't here to mediate but to exploit, to twist the situation for his own hidden agenda. And sure enough, the director continued, we intercepted intelligence, classified, above top secret, that suggests one of you has been compromised, leaking information from the highest levels of your respective branches, and that makes tonight more than coincidence, it makes it reckoning. And though gasps filled the room, Marcus's hand curled into a fist under the table, fury battling against composure, because he knew this was a ploy, a tactic of division, the kind of psychological warfare meant to pit brother against brother. But Malcolm's eyes burned with quiet rage, his voice steady as he replied, you don't get to walk in here and spin lies to cover incompetence, Director. If there's a leak, it's not coming from us, it's coming from your own house, the same house that sent these trigger-happy cops to bait us into a confrontation. And the rookie officer, still shaken but emboldened by the truth he now believed, whispered, he's right, we were sent here on a vague call. It didn't feel right, but his words were quickly silenced by his superior's glare, though the seed of doubt had been planted, spreading among the bar's witnesses, their phones still rolling, their live streams broadcasting to an audience far larger than anyone inside imagined. Viewers across the city and soon the nation tuning in, hashtags already trending, the narrative slipping out of the director's control, and that was when Marcus, rising fully to his feet, shoulders squared, voice booming with unshakable authority, declared, we have given our lives, our blood, to defend this country from enemies foreign and domestic, and yet here we stand, treated as criminals by those sworn to serve, smeared by lies to protect corrupt power. Let it be known tonight, we will not be pawns in your game. And his words ignited the crowd, cheers erupting from patrons who only minutes ago cowered in fear, their voices rising, chanting, let them go. Let them go. The pressure mounting, cameras capturing every second, and Halvorsen, realizing the tide was slipping, gestured sharply, his agents raising weapons with professional precision. But before a single trigger could be pulled, Malcolm moved, not with violence but with calculated dominance, his voice cutting like a blade. You raise those rifles, you declare war not just on us but on everything we represent. And you know exactly how that ends. And the agents faltered, for in their training they had studied men like Malcolm Blackwell, legendary operatives whose skills made entire units reconsider their orders, and for the first time cracks appeared in Halvorsen's mask, his smirk wavering, sweat beating at his temple, and then, the twist that shifted everything, a new voice boomed from the doorway, authoritative, commanding, carrying the weight of ultimate power, stand down, all of you. And in walked General Catherine Monroe, the highest-ranking woman in the Pentagon, her presence instantly commanding respect, her decorated uniform gleaming under the bar lights, and gasps filled the room as everyone from officers to agents stiffened into silence, for she was the kind of leader who needed no introduction, and as she strode forward, her eyes fixed on Halvorsen with undisguised contempt, she declared, I've been tracking this operation from the start, Director, and your little stunt ends here. Commander Blackwell and Captain Blackwell are national assets, patriots of the highest order, and you dared to stage a setup to frame them, to cover your own failures. And her words shattered the last threads of his composure, the director stammering, reaching for excuses, but before he could finish, Monroe snapped her fingers and agents loyal to her, not him, swept in, seizing his briefcase, cuffing him, revealing stacks of evidence inside linking him to illegal arms deals. the very leaks he had tried to pin on the twins, and the bar erupted again, patrons screaming, clapping, capturing history in real time. The officers who had threatened the brothers now standing in shame, some openly apologizing, the rookie saluting Marcus with teary eyes, and in the midst of the chaos, Malcolm turned to Marcus, their silent bond speaking louder than words, both knowing that tonight had not only tested them but exposed a deeper rot within the system they had bled for. And as Monroe turned to them, her expression softening, she said, "You two may have just saved this country again, not with weapons, but with truth." And though the night had begun with humiliation and danger, it ended with vindication, the twins walking out of the bar under the glow of flashing lights, not in handcuffs but as symbols, their story already spreading like wildfire across the nation, headlines erupting, social media ablaze, America and beyond discovering that two black men once threatened by ignorance were in fact the very shield of freedom. And as Marcus looked to the horizon and Malcolm adjusted his jacket, he muttered quietly, "They'll never forget tonight," and his brother nodded, a rare smile tugging at his lips. "No, they won't, and neither will we," for the war was far from over, but tonight, victory was theirs, and the world had finally seen them for who they truly were. Not suspects, not victims, but warriors, leaders, brothers, legends.